19. Ikindi nuko ya mirimo abagore basanzwe bakora idahemberwa bitirira umuco yarushijeho kwiyongera.
Imirimo idahemberwa yariyongereye cyane kuko nko mu rugo abakoraga byose umwanya wo kwita ku bana uriyongera kandi bari kubura gushaka amafaranga. Usanga twaragiye kubyiga abakozi bo mu rugo nabo kubera twagiye kubyikorera, usanga umuhaye konji kandi ntaye konji umuhaye, ahubwo usa nkaho umwirukanye.
Nge ingaruka yamuritseho nyine ni iryo kontorora ntarimenyereye nawe ataramenyereye byabonetse. Guhura kenshi njye nawe byabaye kenshi, urumva imbogamizi zo zabayeho kuko niba narimenyereye ko umwakira atashye nimugoroba atashye nanjye mvuye mu byanjye, noneho amanywa yose muri kumwe, urumva mwakiranaga ko abyumva. Cyane cyane ku rukundo rw'abashakanye, urumva byo byagiye byarusha ko ya masaha yabaga yagiye, noneho yabaga ari mu rugo. Icyo gihe rero hagiye hagaragara inda zibyawe zitateguwe.
Ariko covid ikimara kuba njye nahuye n'ingorane, ahubwo ndavuga nti no guhunga yewe nari mbonye aho mpungira nahunga. Uri kumva umutware ka kazi karahagaze, asigara ari njye hanze amaso n'abana. Umwana byagira nimugoroba akavuga urabona n'amashuri yarahagaze ntaho bari kwiga, nko kuvuga ngo umuntu baragiye nawe ugiye mu byawe wenda se byahohota igitsina ngo ribuze kuruhukira mu mirimo yawe wagiyemo, kandi isaha ku isaha mwari muri kumwe. Abategarugori rero twahuye n'ihohota rirenze, ntange nyirizina njye nihure n'ihohota ryanjye by'umwihariko,
haba ku bantu ku giti cyabo, haba no ku nganda n'ibigo bitunganya imyaka. Kwishyura imyenda y'amabanki n'indi myenda byabaye ikibazo gikomeye na n'ubu kigikururana.
Ko nk'umugore nari nateguye umushinga wo gucuruza ibikomoka ku matungo bijyana i Kigali, ariko mfite imaze gutera ibyo nacuruzaga nabuze aho mbigemura, nabuze aho mbinyuza, mbese muri make nabuze inzira. Ubwo rero nafashe ideni muri sako rihwanye na miliyoni, kuryishyura ntibyanyoroheye. Kugeza uyu munsi wa none ideni ndacyarimo sindabasha kuryishyura.
Ariko ni ukuvuga ngo ririya deni rirahamye umuriyemesha kurisha kuba nta gishoro ufite n'ideni.
Amafaranga y'abadamu yagiye asohoka, cyangwa se banki nayo ikurikije wenda kubona ikaguha amafaranga ngiye barayampaye, ndaza ndashora ndahinga, noneho nkaho zakeze nkunye nabona uburyo niteza imbere mu byo nari ngamije. Korona ibirateye, urumva banki yakomeje ibara inyungu zayo, nge kandi umushinga wanjye nakoze naho ndi kuwujyana.
Babona nk'iyo cyangwa 60-70 gutyo urishura banki 70 wenda babaga bayasarura, ariko niba wasaruraga 70 ugasarura 20 ugashaka andi 50 ahantu urayakura, nabyo ari ikibazo. Ufite itungo urarigurisha, kuko undi kwezi niba hasigaye irindi urigurisha, kandi iryo tungo twarikuraga ifumbire nanone turi gushora mu butaka. Ni ukuvuga ngo iyi covid bose idusigiye ubukene butoroshe.
Nkanjye ku rwanjye ruhande mfite abana 2 bari mu ishuri, nari nagujije banki nzi neza yuko nzajya mfite amafaranga muri izo nanasi nkishyura, ariko gutya nabuze ubwishyu, agaka kari mu rugo ndagatanga bikarangiza ya mafaranga. No ku bigo ubu bari kumpamagara buri muntu atabwisogonda, amafaranga y'abana ageze hehe, turabasohora.
Twari dufite umwenda wo kwishyura inzu w'ubukode bw'inzu. Icyo gihe rero ntabwo twashoboye kuzishyura kuko tutakoraga.
Tukiri ku kudashobora kwishyura imyenda ku buryo bw'umwihariko, ba rwiyemezamirimo bahuye n'igihombo gikabije cyane ku buryo n'igishoro cyahiriyemo.
Wari ufite kugura amatungo yahise ahagarara akagumana itungo afite, ahubwo ayo mafaranga aba yari yabitse akaba ariyo baryaga, abandi bafashe igishoro bari cyo kibatunga bakiryamo.
Ahagaritse narangije kugura inanasi zihuje n'imodoka ebyiri nagomba gukwirakwiza ku masoko hirya no hino. Rebye izihaye agaciro muri icyo cyumweru zari zihuje nk'agaciro ka 6,000,000. Byarangiye inanasi zimboranye, igishoro aho bafunguriye cyabaye gike cyane. Ubungubu
ingaruka zatugezeho kubera ko n'igishoro kukibona ni ikibazo.
hariho utundi tuntu tujya duhinga, nkanjye ndi umuhinzi w'imbuto z'intoryi iwanjye mu rugo, ariko kovide yabaye twari twarashoye mu mirima yacu, intoryi zari zeze ibaye, tubura amasoko yo kuzijyanamo, imbuto zihishiriza mu murima zidupfira ubusa. ubwo ibishoro twari twarashoyemo, intoryi nazo zisaba byinshi, zisaba amasasiro, amafumbire mvaruganda, imiti yo kuzitera, ibyo byose twabuze aho twagurisha umusaruro wacu. ubwo igishoro cyacu twe twarashoyemo cyapfiriyemo.
ikindi cyagabanutse cyane ndetse ahenshi kikanabura ni ukwizigama.
rero dufite amatsinda twizigama tukanagurizanya, ariko kubera kovide yatejemo ntitubone umusaruro ushimishije, amatsinda yarahungabanye, ntabwo twizigama nk'uko twizigama.
ushatse n'umwana ushatse nshakamo 50 tukahava gabonye
shije guhangana n'ingaruka za COVID-19.
bahangaha muri uyu muryango muri koperative ya Kofaga
Allô? Allô?
koperative
ibintu nkabyohereza no mu kwezi.
We want to resume our session. I kindly request you to take seats, and we start our next pool of presentations. IT crew, please check if people are back on Zoom, if we can get them, because the first presentation is going to be delivered physically with the person who is in the room, but the second one is not in the room. So make sure you check someone called Emerita on Zoom list, check if he's already on Zoom. He's gonna be the second presenter. Now, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. Now it's time to resume our session. I want to invite, as you can see on the agenda, we're supposed to have presentation with the Emerita, but because he's not in the room, we discussed with him, we exchanged a little bit. He will be second. He's going to present as a second presenter. We start with the Vedast. They exchanged. The second presentation comes first. So we can have presentation by Vedast. He's going to present on impact of mobile banking on the well-being of Rwandan citizens during the coronavirus period. He's going to use a case study of Umwarimu Sako. Vedast is a member to senior member to EPRN. Beyond that, he is also doing his PhD studies at Mount Kenya University. So we are happy to be with you, Vedast, and you can take the microphone and go ahead with your presentation. You try to summarize. Maybe you have 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is Byombi Kamasa Vedast. I'm a senior researcher at EPRN, and I have been presenting papers in different EPRN conferences. The topic of my research is the impact of Umwarimu Sako mobile banking on the well-being of Rwandan citizens, a case study of Umwarimu Sako. Umwarimu Sako is a saving and credit cooperative of teachers and people operating in education. The introduction of this research is based on the how mobile banking has got credit from different people. I will request people from the ICT to help me, please. Yeah, mobile banking has got credit in the coming years from banking sector. Mobile banking itself is the delivery of financial services using telephone and other IT tools to bank and non-bank clients. It has experienced a big growth in the past years, and ICT as a tool is contributing to economic development of both developed and developing countries. It has attracted the attention of many researchers about how it contributes to the well-being of citizens. Mobile banking, as it is, it has, we can go to the next slide. Mobile technology has got credit all over the world by contributing to the economic development of many countries. As you can see on the slide, it has opened the opportunities to productivity and well-being of citizens by creating ways of earning money to new businesses in developing countries. It has at the same time created a room and reduced cost and of people who are using it. It offers safe storage, deposit, withdraw, and money transfer for people who are using it. It also increases the capacities of people who are using it to be able to use it in the remote areas. We thought to carry such research in Rwanda to see how mobile banking used by Umwarimu Sacco has helped people to travel long distances to go to branches to perform bank services. You can go next. The well-being as it is to meet the basic needs of people using it. And mobile phone could be used to reach many more customers at low cost than any existing channel. Despite this potential, the vast majority of countries that are not yet using mobile banking as it is. And the objective of this research is to see the effect of mobile banking and how it affects the well-being of people during the COVID-19 pandemic period. Next. The statement of the problem, so far, the influence of mobile phone financial services on objective well-being has been overlooked. To the best of the author's knowledge, up to now, the impact of technology readiness among the marginalized group has not been revealed. Now, scholars also believe that there is a significant lack of research in the area of social innovation. Social innovation, which is okay, let us go to, I was explaining social innovation, which is how we measure well-being, subjective well-being, focusing particularly on marginalized people. You can think about why this research is carried on public employees. We will go there in a few minutes. Now, the methodology used, the total population of the research is 50,000 people operating in education, teachers, school leaders, and other educators. Now we selected a sample of 521 respondents in the 30 districts of the country. And this sample was selected using stratified random sampling, and a structured questionnaire was used to collect primary data, and secondary data were collected from the financial institution. Next. We used, next. Yeah. Now, for analyzing data, we used what we call structured equation model to be able to draw the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. And we used technology readiness index to be able to see how people who are using IT are familiar and enjoying the tool. Next. This is the model which we drawn. We have 3 independent variables: purchase, security, services, and 1 dependent variable which is the well-being. We can go next. This is the specification of the model. D1, D2, D3 refers to the application, how the application is well made. It refers to security. And G1, G2, G3, G4 is related to services, how people can access services using the mobile banking software. It means they can have overdraft, line of credit, and other bank services. Next. The following is about purchase, how people can, A6, A7, A8, they refer to how people can access all what they need using the app, how safer using the app is, and how faster it is. Now on well-being, we want to see how the app is helping people to have access of services on moderate price, better services compared to its price, and makes people use less than what was expected. Now we can go immediately to the findings of the research. Yeah, from the findings, you can see that the demographic information shows us that many people who responded to the questionnaire are between 25 years old to 44 years old, meaning that there are people who are at a moderate age. Aged people are not using much the application. I don't know why. Maybe in the next research we can find how the age can affect the use of ICT. We can go next. The following is the gender. I was astonished to see that a big number of respondents are female. 74.9% of the respondents are female, which is a good sign. But behind that, we noticed that many teachers, mainly in primary school, are female. We can go next. Now, this is the result of the model. This is the result of the model. We can go next for the explanation of the model. As you can see, the three independent variables have a positive and significant relationship with the dependent variable, which is well-being. As you can see, purchase, security, and services have a positive relationship with the dependent variable, which is well-being, meaning that they affect the well-being positively. We can go to next to see the details of how it is. As you can see, the variables, purchase, services, and security have a positive and significant relationship with the dependent variable, which means that by using this mobile banking application, people using them are happy. They are happy to purchase. They are happy with the services which are provided, as I have said, overdraft, line of credit, and other online services. But at the same time, they are happy. They trust the security of the application, saying that no fraud, no other things can happen while using the application. You can go next. Yeah, this is what I have just said on purchase side. On purchase side, they said, you can see that the p-value is really significant. They said they find everything, the application is safer and faster. Next. On security, they say the application is well made, no fraud, and excellent security, saying that by using it, many people fear to use this online application, saying that it's not safe. But for this one, you can see how respondents are saying that the application is safe. Is safe, no fraud, and excellent security. We can go now to services. Next, the services which are offered, the overdraft, line of credit, other loan online, they are also significant. They say they enjoy using them, applying them from the using the application, saying that it's easy to find them. And through the interview, they testify that in less than 1 minute, you can apply to an overdraft online. You have it. The same on the line of credit and other service, other loan applied online. Now we can go next. Toward the end of my presentation, It was also found that the well-being in terms of moderate price, better service compared to its price, and spend less, they are also significant, meaning that they have shown how by using these applications, this app, you are able to save money, you are able to have access to services which are less charged compared to other services. And from the interviews, people testified that they used, we can go to the next slide. People testified that they used to make kilometers, spending much money between 1,000 and 5,000 going to the SACCO branch to withdraw or to have any other services. But now they are having all those services online, at least on 20 francs, Rwandan francs, which is a big reduction, which is a big saving of using this mobile banking in their services. And what is good by using this, even the price, the service price is less than other online services which are charging more than what other people are charging. Now we can go to the conclusion. We concluded saying that mobile banking helped users to improve their living standard through different ways. First, cost reduction of transport fees to cooperative branches. Second, easy way of accessing bank products, overdraft and line of credit. Third, enjoyment of using the application. It's easy to use. Fourth, no time waiting to be served. They used to waste long time waiting on the queue, waiting to be served. Next, limitations. The application has some limitations. The first one is for the one to be able to purchase, there is a need to have first to load the money into your MTN mobile money account for you to be able to buy and say, buy product and services, which is a limitation. The second is that they use only MTN, though they have other telecommunication companies which can be involved, Tigo, Airtel, and others, which is a limitation also because people using Tigo and Airtel are somehow excluded from the process of Umwari Musako mobile banking. And there are other services which are not online, like when you want to apply for an advance, salary advance or a mortgage loan, you will again need to go to the head office or the branches to apply physically. Now, it's good to see that it has some advantages. And this limitation will lead us to the recommendation. We can go next. Now the recommendation is this. We would like the leadership of Umwari Musako to think about how they can put other services like advanced salary and mortgage loan online for people to be able to use it. Second, would like to recommend to the National Bank to be able to support the SACCO to help people to have these services at a good rate. And third, these services are paid. We will recommend users to be careful and use them for the purposes of the services they want, not just to use them for the sake of using them because it's a paid service. At a certain time, they can find themselves being using their money in services which is not really good to use. Thank you very much. I'm happy with the presentation. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fidast, for a nice presentation. And we will have a time for comments and questions after. Now, IT team, you can unmute Mr. Emerita, the next presenter. Emerita works at...
Hello there. So this is Emerita from EPRN,
okay, go ahead.
and I hope you are going to upload here.
I'm just sharing your presentation, so IT, you can help me. I think you can see my slide, Emerita.
Okay, thank you. This is Emerita. I hope you can hear me now. So from EPRN, and today I'm going to present this work on assessing the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on Rwanda's economy, especially focusing on food systems, poverty, and GDP. This work uses the social accounting metrics multiplier approach. And this work was done by myself and a number of colleagues in EPRN with close collaboration with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. And therefore, I should render special thanks to Gigier, Terry. I'm hearing echo. So special thanks to Gigier, Terry and Aaron from GIZ for their constructive comments during the analysis. And special thanks to David Spillman as well, from EPRN country office in Kigali, Rwanda, for his contribution throughout the analysis, as well as for organizing the work. Next slide, please. Great. So I must provide this preamble stating that this was an assessment which was conducted a couple of months around April to September 2020 with the intention of providing rapid assessment for policymakers on the impact of the COVID shock, which was still unfolding in the country and of course all over the world. Therefore, the purpose of that assessment and the assessment that I'm presenting reports the case and our understanding of the economic impact of COVID and how it evolves as of August 2020. And therefore, this study that I'm communicating offers kind of illustrated insights into the method that we use to understand the economic impact of COVID, and of course the one that is used in this specific case study, as well as in a number of countries in Africa and Asia. Next slide, please. Great. So an obvious introduction, of course, that the government of Rwanda has introduced a number of measures actually to control the impact of COVID even before the first case was observed within the country, and that was around mid-March 2020. And since then, a number of measures were introduced, including that famous national lockdown policy that was introduced around the final week of March, and which was extended for 6 weeks all the way through the first week of May, and refers to the first round of the lockdown measure. And as you all know, there was another round of lockdown the beginning of this year, but this study analyzes our understanding, the impact of COVID, given our understanding around August 2020. And this lockdown policy would actually affect the movement of people as well as the normal operation of economic activities. And the intention of this analysis is to estimate the short-term economic impact of the COVID-related restrictive measures, especially by focusing on the lockdown period duration, as well as by examining the impact stretching over the period to the end of 2020, so to the end of Q4 of 2020. To do that, we have used some multiplier modeling technique using very disaggregated social account metrics for Rwanda that represented the economic structure by 2018. Next slide, please. So to provide a little bit depth into the method of analysis, which informs the results. So lockdown policies and the COVID shock itself can have direct impacts on the operation of sectors which are targeted. You can think of the hotel sector, restaurants, which were restricted, and travel and transport as well, be it international travel as well as travel within the cities, between cities or within the city. So some of the restrictive policies might have this kind of direct impacts. But on top of that, they can also generate indirect impacts on other sectors, which are linked to the sectors targeted through the supply chain. So be it input suppliers or downstream users. When the hotel sector is restricted, input suppliers will also be affected. So to examine the overall economic impact of the COVID pandemic, as well as the response measures taken, we used a social accounting metrics modeling approach, which uses input-output data that reflects the economic relationships in the country. And in the end, our purpose was to generate indicators, impact indicators, focusing on household incomes, change in employment, and the gross domestic product, to list a few. So as a background further, these models, some multiplier models, have been used really frequently for economic modeling purposes, and even until recently, for a number of reasons, including the fact that they are simplistic, they are easy to implement, and there is also very limited data requirement compared to more sophisticated economic and behavioral models like CG models, and they are also transparent. Next slide. So on the other hand, next slide, there are challenges or downsides of social accounting metrics models. These challenges include the fact that they are fixed price models, so they don't really take into account economic agents' behavior to respond to relative prices. The slide earlier. On the other hand, they are still useful to study the impact of this COVID pandemic on, because the pandemic itself is really unprecedented and offers kind of rapid onset shock. And it means that the implication of this is that economic agents will not have adequate time to respond to. So assuming fixed prices may not be really a huge downside of multiplier models when it comes to unprecedented short-term rapid onset shocks. And the literature also supports that some multiplier models can be appropriate in this kind of economic situations. And these models are built upon social accounting matrices that separate the entire economy in the form of disaggregated sectors. So specifically, the Rwandan social accounting matrix that we used for this exercise splits the economy into 86 separate sectors. So the very first attempt was to determine the shock and to link the shock to the final demand, and then that would ultimately lead to declining production. And to determine the size of the shock across our impact channels, we had to work quite closely with local collaborators, and experts, especially with our collaborators from the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, and using that we are able to determine or assess at least or provide our first cut into the estimate of the impact of COVID pandemic in Rwanda. And the lockdown measures were simulated using a number of impact channels that I'm going to take you to in my next slide. But at this point, I must also say that our assessment does not really include all sorts of relief measures that were taken by the government of Rwanda in collaboration with development agencies to slow down the economic impact of the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. So in my next slide, what I'm going to have is a presentation of, a framework of analyzing COVID pandemic. And we've used this framework, which breaks down the impact channels into two broader classes, the domestic impact channels as well as the global impact channels. And the global impact channels relate to impacts as a result of full or partial lockdowns in Rwanda's trading partners when it comes to export demand, for example, or remittance inflow as a result of slower economic activity in countries where Rwandans outside Rwanda are residing, and which we used to be remitting as much as they can. And another global impact channel was the foreign direct investment channel, although this was not taken into account. The last channel was not taken into account in this analysis. We also considered the domestic impact channels that were as a result of the lockdown measures in the country. You can think of the restaurants, sport and entertainment, the hotel and transport and this kind of services which were impacted due to those restrictions with an effort to contain the spread of the COVID pandemic. So these both domestic and global impact channels have their own direct impacts on the most proximate sectors that are closer to those, which will ultimately lead to indirect impacts due to the economic nature of our analysis and due to backward and forward interlinkage between sectors. When the restaurant sector is affected, upstream sectors which are supplying intermediate inputs to restaurant will be affected, etc. And in this framework, we try to use the sum multiplier model to examine the economic impact of the COVID pandemic on GDP, poverty, income, and employment. And of course, looking at these specific impact channels, you can think of many other countries, neighboring countries, for example, and the impact channels might have their own separate impacts and different degree, and differing from one country to the other. Next slide, please. So in this slide, what we want to communicate with you are the simulation scenarios that we have implemented. And we have implemented two major simulation scenarios. The first one is impact during the lockdown period. So when I define the lockdown period, we mean that those 6 weeks initial lockdown period stretching from March to May. The second major simulation scenario relates to the easing of restrictions, with the assumption that when looking things back in around August or May or closer to that in 2020, you would imagine that things would improve gradually by the end of 2020. And in the simulation scenario, what we wanted to do is what would be the impact across all the way through the end of the year if different rates of relaxation of restrictions were put in place. So in here we have two separate scenarios as well: a faster relaxation of or easing of restrictions and a slower easing of restrictions. The lockdown period, of course, stretches for 6 weeks, and our initial simulation scenario targets that lockdown period. But in the slower recovery of or restrictions, we assume that the economy will still remain below pre-COVID situations by the end of 2020. And in the faster easing of restrictions, we assume that things would improve very quickly and then the economy will get back to its normal situation around the third quarter of 2020. Things might look a little bit different right now, but this is what the kind of assumption that our understanding at that time and the kind of assumption that we had to make. Next slide, please. Where it takes me to the first slide on results. So in here, what we wanted to show was to show the impact of the COVID pandemic, especially during the lockdown period, on GDP and across sectors, of course. And our assessment at that time implies that during the 6-week period, Rwanda's GDP has declined by 39% compared to, this is the key term, compared to the no-COVID situation for a normal 6-week period, a corresponding normal 6-week period. So a 39% drop in GDP for that period in relation to a normal situation and no-COVID situation. Sector-wise, the impact is more stronger for the mining and the construction sector, and these are given our impact channel assumptions, those sectors that are most hit in terms of the restrictions that were imposed. And you might also look at agriculture in relation to all other sectors. It's not affected so much because there was no direct restriction to the agricultural sector, but due to interlinkages with upstream sectors, especially on the food processing and production sector, our assumption, our analysis shows that during that 6-week period of complete lockdown, agriculture was affected by about 7% compared to a normal performance. Next slide, please. And here in my next slide, we were presenting, which of the impact channels contribute most to the decline in GDP in that 6-week complete lockdown. And our assessment shows that the two most important channels are foreign and export demand, of course. That was a problem across the world, and exports were really contained to a greater extent. And the construction sector was another one because of the sheer size of the sector itself, as well as because of restrictions that were in place. And these two sectors contribute to about 1/3 of the 39% decline in GDP, followed by the next three sectors, which are non-essential business, restrictions to wholesale trade and manufacturing, contributed to another 1/3. But if you go down to this figure, you'll see that some of the sectors like remittances, entertainment, and mining were contributing only minimal. But it does not mean that these sectors were not directly affected at a greater extent, but their share in total GDP is smaller. So their contribution to that 39% decline in GDP is also smaller. Next slide, please. In my next slide, I'm going to show you the impact on agri-food systems. And agri-food systems in here are defined broadly to encompass the agricultural sector, the primary agricultural sector, agro-processing, sectors which are using agriculture as their mere intermediate input to produce, like the dairy processing, meat processing, food processing sectors. We have also the food trade and transport sector, which contributes to about 4% of the Rwanda's GDP, and the agri-food system also incorporates the food services sector, the hotel and restaurant, that contributes to 2%. So although largely the food supply sector was exempt from the direct restrictions because it's one of the basic, sector in the economy, but due to the linkage with the rest of the economy, this sector was also affected by about 13% during that 6-week lockdown period, and mainly due to declining final demand. Let's say you can think of restaurants demanding less of food, agricultural commodities, and declining intermediate demand for this agri-food system. And to split further and zoom in a bit more, you can also see from the figure that the food service sector in percentage terms is the one that's hit hard. And the food service sector includes the restaurants and hotels, which are affected by the domestic lockdown as well as due to decline in tourist inflows. But in quantity terms, in value terms, agriculture contributes a significant proportion of the decline in GDP within the agriculture system. Obviously, because agriculture itself contributing to over 30% of the GDP of Rwanda is a broader component of the agriculture system. Next slide, please. And in here, we wanted to report to you the impact of that 6-week lockdown period on poverty during that 6 weeks relative to the no COVID situation. And you'll see very, very intriguing figures in here, implying that maybe, household incomes are affected significantly. And that's true for all types of household groups that we use in the Rwandan social accounting metrics. But there is a rural and urban divide, as well as a low and high income household divide from these results. We note that the smaller losses are for rural households because these households' incomes are more directed to or linked to agriculture, so because of the structure of their incomes. On the other hand, larger income losses are in urban areas, and especially urban high income in the quintile 3 to 5 are the ones that are affected considerably because of the nature of the restrictions. And restrictions are more likely to be imposed on formal sectors as well. Also, the informal sector, which employs maybe the low income quintile households, could still be affected significantly, but there will still be some underground operations people can still continue to do, but the formal sector will not have that room to escape from this kind of restrictions. And usually those employed in the formal sector are higher income households. So note this rural, urban, as well as by income quintile divide on the impact of the COVID and its related restrictive measures. Next slide. Where I'm going to talk about poverty and the impact of poverty during the lockdown period. So within that 6-week lockdown period, our estimate shows that the poverty headcount rate increases by 11 percentage points. And stating this in another way, this is equivalent to a new 1.3 million more poor Rwandans emerging. But in this case, what we have assumed when we assess the income change, we didn't really account for the fact that some of the employers will still continue to pay, even if labor is not contributing. But when we examine the poverty impact, since poverty is calculated from the consumption side, we assume some sort of consumption smoothing. So we assume that some of the households can still continue to consume as much by saving or by selling their assets. So after accounting for that, this is the result. So about 1.3 million new poor people during that lockdown period. And there is still that rural-urban divide as well. Urban households experience the higher percentage point increase in poverty, but in terms of headcount, rural households experience the biggest 1.1 out of 1.3, and basically because most of the Rwandans live in rural areas, as well as most of the poor are still residing in rural areas. Next slide. So here I'm going to take you to the second set of simulation scenarios, the recovery scenarios, where we consider two types of recovery scenarios: a slower recovery scenario, a slower relaxation of restrictions, and a faster recovery scenario where we assume the economy rebounds quickly. And results here are in comparison with the GDP, the actual GDP in 2019. So compared to actual GDP in 2019, our assessment at that time shows that the Rwandan GDP by the end of 2020 could be 4 to 9% lower. And this is, by chance, I may say, really close to the government's recent report on the performance of the GDP, although methodologically and in many aspects that the forecasting tool or the projection tool or the assessment tool that's being used by the government in this multiplier analysis are quite different, but our estimates are really close. And we also see that as you see it, quarter by quarter, we assess at that time that positive growth rate can return by around quarter 3 and quarter 4 of 2020. But then at the end of the day, the annual GDP growth would still remain negative in the range of 4 to 9, depending on how fast the economy would recover. Next slide, please. Almost finishing up. So here is the poverty impact of the COVID restricted measures, and depending on our assumption in August of how the economy would revive. And then here what we see is that poverty can actually, by the end of the fourth quarter, stabilize back with only 0.4 percentage point to 1.1 percentage point increase in poverty rate by the end of 2020. But this quarter 4 results might hide, a number of detailed poverty transitions all the way through the quarters. And you might see in quarter 2, for example, that there is a slightly higher increase in poverty rate, but then slowing down as people start to return back to work, and as they start to generate their incomes and continue boosting their consumption through time. So this is the poverty impact analysis, and I'll be finishing up with my next slide. Next slide, please, where I'm going to share with you how we conclude that study. So our conclusion from this analysis is that the response measures, as well as the COVID pandemic, can actually have diverse effects across sectors and across agents, across households, be it rural or urban, whether you look at it from the income quintile perspective. And to slow down, or at least to counteract the impact of the COVID and response measures that were put in place, we at that time suggested to actually restart key industrial sectors, especially the construction, manufacturing, and some trade sectors, because they are the ones that are employing a larger proportion of urban labor force, for example, and they are the ones they are experiencing, from our assessment, a higher impact out of the COVID shock. We also suggested to expand social protection, especially by identifying vulnerable portion of the community, of the society, who were not able to recover in their own. And another key intervention area would be supporting small and medium enterprises, as well as the informal sector. These are the main employers in the Rwandan type of economies. And the export sector was one of the key channels of the decline in GDP. And then we suggested to revitalize cross-border trade, safe cross-border trades with neighboring countries, especially with the Democratic Republic of Congo, because of huge inland trade with that country. So to conclude, this analysis do not actually account for all recovery plans and interventions that were put in place, including the economic recovery plan, and in collaboration with our counterparts in the country from Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, as well as the general support from the GIZ, we are on the process of incorporating these relief measures into the impact analysis, and that will be communicated with you very soon. So I should finish up my presentation with acknowledgement that's posted in my next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we really are thankful of general support and financial as well as in terms of enriching the analysis from all of the institutions which are listed over here. And thank you so much. That's back to you.
Thank you very much, Merta. Thank you very much for a nice presentation. Now, as we said, we're gonna have the 4 presentations together, and then we comment on them. Emerita, we hope you are still with us, because we join the panel in a few minutes. Let us have a 3rd presentation from Dr. Fidel. Yes. Can you come forward? Just come forward and make a presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to present in this afternoon my paper entitled Okay, my paper is entitled The Role of Digital Solution in Economic Resilience and Growth in Rwanda. So we have worked with a team composed by 3 people: Babazi Christian, Kamukunzi Dominique, and myself. So, with the content of this paper, we have introduction, evolution of digital economy concept, the main concept of digital economy. We also look at digital the evolution or emergence of digital economy in Rwanda, and then we look at methodology and the source of data, then the findings and analysis and the conclusion, and then the recommendation. Please, can you go far? Okay. In our introduction, we see that COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted and has impacted the daily life of citizens in an unprecedented manner. As we know, the COVID-19 has impacted our daily life, all of us. In the same time, governments has continued to innovate hard for protecting lives of people by imposing or they put some measures like lockdowns, testings, segregation, and even treatment. So as a result, many businesses were forced to shut down. And even if the business are reopened, so they reopen with some restriction. So the traditional shopping has becoming difficult to access, and people move to online shopping. So this has resulted in increasing in business to customer, or B2C sales, an increase in business to business, or B2B. So these are the e-commerce which was resurgent. So the use of mobile money as well has shown its efficiency in looking about payment solution. So the means of payment as commonly called e-payment was very instrumental. So during this pandemic period of time, so it has been clearly shown that e-commerce and e-payment can be an important tool or solution for consumers, meaning people, businesses, institutions, and the economy as a whole. So in our research, we focus on assertion the role of e-commerce associated with e-payment on economic resilience and growth. So we try to show how e-commerce and e-payment has helped a lot for overcome the problems raised by COVID-19. Next. So before we go far in our research, so first of all, we look at the evolution of digital economy concept, how the digital economy are. So since the first coin mid-19s, so the definition of digital economy has evolved. So reflecting the rapid changing nature of technology, and it is used by enterprises and consumers. So in the late 19s, so, the analysts were mainly concerned with adoption of the internet, and they are thinking about the economic impact. So in the early 90s, when we talked about digital economy, it meant the use of internet and its impact, economic impact. As internet use were expanding, some reports in the mid-2000 focus increasingly on the condition under which the internet economy might emerge and grow. So the definition evolved, and it includes different policies and digital technology on one hand, and the growth of ICT, or information communication technology, and the digitally oriented firms as a key on the other. So with the improvement of internet connectivity in the developed countries, the expansion in the range of digital firms, products, and services, studies of the digital economy have begun to include more substantial analysis of the situation in developed countries. So this process was referred to as digitalization. So defined as the transition of businesses through the use of digital technology, products, and services. Next. So with digital technology underpinning ever more transactions, so the digital economy is becoming increasingly inseparable from functioning of the economy as a whole. So now in a modern time, when we talk about digital economy, it is inseparable from the function of the economy as a whole. So we do have 3 components of different technology which encompass economic aspect of digital economy. So the first one is a core aspect or foundation aspect of the digital economy, which comprise fundamental innovations and the core technology like semiconductors, processors, computers, telecommunication devices, etc., which enabling infrastructure, means internet and the telecommunication network. So the second component is the digital and information technology sector. So this one, it produces key products or services that rely on core digital technologies, including digital platform, mobile application, and payment services. So the digital economy is a high degree affected by innovative services in this sector, so which are making a growing contribution to economies, as well as enabling the potential spillover effect to other sector. So the third component is a wider set of digitization sector. This, it includes those where digital products and services are being increasingly used. For example, e-commerce. So it includes digital enablement sector in which new activity or business model have emerged and are being transformed as a result of digital technology. So next. So the main component of the digital economy, we do have the first component is blockchain. The second is data analytics. The third, artificial intelligence. And the other emerging technology range from user-facing devices such as computer and a smartphone to 3D printers and wearable, as well as specialized machine-oriented hardware such as Internet of Things, automation and robotics, cloud computing. So rapid advances in these increasingly converging technologies have been enabled by a surge in capacity, as well as considerable cost reduction of data storage, processing, and transmission. Next. So for the case of Rwanda, the digital economy has emerged. So despite its small size, Rwanda has distinguished itself as a country that has bet big on digitization as means to accelerate growth and reduce poverty. Rwanda has already begun to chart an ambitious course of achieving rapid digital transformation. So what it has done, it has investing heavily in the rollout of digital infrastructure, piloting innovative scheme and partnership with no-profit and for-profit organization to boost the national digital skills base. It has expanded its public digital services capability and creating an enabling environment for digital service and business innovation. So Rwanda's ICT sector has been growing rapidly over the last 5 years, witnessing a 12.7% value added increase in 2013 to 2018. So the World Economic Forum Network Readiness Index subsequently rated Rwanda first among East African nations in terms of its readiness to exploit the opportunity offered by ICT. to boost growth and competitiveness. This is the report from the World Bank 2020. So Rwanda's digital development journey to date has been spearheaded by a government deeply committed to leverage ICT as a cross-cutting enabler of economic growth. So Rwanda has recognized that the ICT is an important tool for economic boost. So this commitment is reflected in the sheer number of related strategies and the policies that the government had adopted over years. So as sizable investment and initiative launched that have sought to create an enabling environment for ICT adoption, expand the digital infrastructure, digital platform and services, and to promote further digital skills development, and to foster a national culture of innovation, and to position Rwanda as a regional digital hub. Next, I think this the methodology and the sources of data. So this area of research has a few articles and papers to the occurrence of COVID-19 pandemic. So that's why we have managed to collect some data from BNR and we analyze them. Then we use descriptive and comparative analysis. So then we come up with some findings. We have collected mainly the data from BNR regarding the transaction on mobile money transaction in value and in volume and value. The transaction in volume and value, and the number of subscribers. Okay, mobile money, mobile internet, and okay, mobile internet, mobile money, and the mobile internet. Okay, these are the findings we come up with. So regarding the transaction in mobile banking, so there we do have a number of subscribers versus a number of transactions in mobile banking. So basically, all of these number, the figure shows us it has the trend is growing, and in 2020, second quarter, the mobile banking transaction has increased at 33% compared to 2020 quarter one. So meaning during the COVID period, the use of the mobile banking has increased at this rate. Can you go next? So internet banking, for the internet banking, the transaction has decreased at 2%. Here, maybe I think people are not they are not trusting the transaction on internet. That's why the transaction has somehow decreased at 2%. Next, the transaction in mobile money. Here, we see that the number of the subscribers and the number of transactions in mobile money has increased at 58% comparing to the previous period of 2020 quarter one. So it keep increasing. Okay, can go ahead. So if we see also in the value, in terms of value of mobile banking, the mobile banking has strongly increased by 280%, 18% on the second quarter of 2020. If you go also we go ahead, we see also the internet banking. We can go. Internet banking, it has also increased at a rate of 90%. Okay, it is increasing slowly comparing to the mobile money. Also, it has a very tremendously increased at 151%. So, can we go as a conclusion? Okay, at the conclusion, we see that there is a very intensive use of digital solution in terms of payment during the COVID-19. And from what we have seen as the findings, we may affirm that digital solution had a profound impact during the COVID-19 crisis in Rwanda by enabling part of the economy to continue functioning online and through remote working. So focusing on digital technologies, it can accelerate the move to a smart economy. If we focus on digital technologies, so this can accelerate the move to smart economy, and in the process to accelerate economic resilience and growth for the prolonged prosperity. So here the digital technology and the digital solution is a main tools for economic resiliency. Can we go ahead? So for this, we do have recommendation which states that we may place a digital solution at the core of the recovery strategy. So itself, the situation has imposed, the digital solution or digital technology has imposed itself. There is no other alternative. So we have to place this digital technology at the core of the recovery strategy. So of course, to achieve this, we have to boost infrastructure investment. So we have to upgrade, we have to increase the infrastructure investment. We have to invest all of this. So of course, the government, of course, on forefront should double. It should double its effort to improve ICT skills and digital literacy. Of course, at this moment, the digital literacy and the skills is still low, and there is a need to upgrade the literacy here in Rwanda, and the skills for people to be they should be using digital technologies. So it requires knowledge and skills. So of course, to enabling digital competition, this is the last recommendation we come up with. So thank you for your kind attention.
Another big round of applause to Dr. Fidel. Thank you very much, Fidel, for the presentation. Now we have a final presentation for today. Before we go into just questions and comments, Dr. Daniel, you can come and deliver your presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Daniel. I'm together with Dr. Faustin. We are EPRN researchers, and we did a research on challenges and opportunities of moving to online learning in the higher learning institutions based on the lessons that we learned during COVID-19 pandemics. During that period, when institutions were closed and all the learning and teaching process was online. So our introduction, all economic researchers backdate from the neoclassic economist to modern economist. They converge at one point that education is the key that can unlock the economic development of any country. This is based on the fact that education is almost a monopoly in the supply of the skilled labor. It's the only institution, or it's the only sector that supplies labor, and therefore it plays a very important part in ensuring that labor is supplied at the right time and in the right place. Maybe we can add with the right skills. You can move on. So COVID-19, as many researchers or many scholars have already said, has not only affected the health system, but it has also affected the education sector. Various researchers have pointed out that COVID-19 has affected the education sector in numerous ways, which include the change in the academic calendar, final year unable to do research and internship, a shift from the normal face-to-face to the online learning. You can move. So the rationale of our study, school closure is one of the non-pharmaceutical measures that were introduced to control the spread of COVID. And in response to the closure of the schools, many education institutions shifted from the normal face-to-face to online. Whereas literature from some countries has been established on the challenges that is faced from this shift from the online learning from the face-to-face to online learning, this literature is still not well known in the Rwandan context. So our methodology that we took, we adapted a quantitative research and specifically descriptive with some few non-parametric measures. The study population were students from the higher learning institutions, and we took randomly 30 students from each institution. We collected the data from both primary, and the data was administered using a questionnaire, which was emailed to students through the class representatives. You can move on. As I've already said, we carried out a descriptive analysis and few inferential statistics. The descriptive, we analyzed using frequency tables, whereas the inferential, we used non-parametric measures, the ANOVA and the classical world studies, which we used to test the significance of the mean of the challenges. So if you look at our results, if you look at the attendance, as I said, the study we conducted it during when the schools were closed and the online learning was on face-to-face. So if we look at the attendance, how students were attending classes, we see that only 28% of the students that were able to attend every day. Majority of the students were unable to attend daily classes. For example, there's 31% only attended once a week, 8% attended twice, and to make matters worse, 29% of the students were unable to attend classes. Can you move on? So what are the challenges that the students specified? Most challenges, most students indicated that they lack computers, they lack enough skills to learn online, lack of electricity to some students, unconducive home environment, lack of internet data, poor internet connections, and some said they are not motivated to study without exams because the system that we had, or the system that were being used, were unable to have formative assessment. So we carried out a classical will test, to test which area that were most affected by this online learning. From our test, it is evident that students from rural areas were more affected by this shift as compared to students in towns and the city of Kigali. So we also conducted a test on the significance of the challenges, as mentioned above, and from that test, using a chi-square, it is evidence that all the challenges were statistically significant, meaning they have impacted the students' learning, as evidenced by a p-value of 0.00. We looked at, we studied the impact of the on-learning using an ANOVA test. And the results or the findings show that there is a reduction in the maintenance cost. In that case, we say because students, they start home, they are not more affected, or the parents are not spending much to maintain the students. We also said, which is significant, affected the quality of the learning, which is also significant. Then lack of face-to-face clarifications, that is students cannot access the lack of the face-to-face clarifications. We also studying without exams, and that one is not statistically significant. Promoted independent learning. The shift has promoted independent learning, whereby students can be able to learn themselves, which is significant. And lack of group discussion, which is not statistically significant. Our conclusion: the shift from the face-to-face to online learning has got both positive and negative impacts, although the negative impacts outweighs the positive impact. So the negative impact, we see that there is learning inequality, which is caused by poor networks, connections, lack of data, lack of electricity, and lack of learning infrastructure, whereby students who miss those items are unable to access learning. And those which have those items, they can have, or they can be able to access learning. The positive impact that we identified is independent learning, whereby students can be able to learn themselves, reduction in the maintenance cost, and it has also helped students to improve their technological skills. Recommendation: we advocate for closing the learning inequality that has been created among our students, most especially students from rural areas and students in towns, or students who are vulnerable, who don't have those resources, and the students that have those resources, such that you can bring them together. Also, we also point that education institutions should train students on online learning, and we advocate that at least a module on online learning should be introduced in the first year as part of the courses to be taught to students. And the last is education institutions should revise their investment model from physical to technology. So the current trend in education, we are moving from the normal face-to-face to a blended learning. So this calls for changing of the investment model, and then start looking at how to invest in technology to move with the change or the new trends in the education. So that is our research. We will be happy to get your comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another big round of applause. Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel. Before you take a seat, I invite you to come forward to sit here, and Dr. Fidel, because we are supposed to have questions, comments, additions on the 4 presentations. Remember, we had a first presentation from Vedast Kamasa. We had a second from Emerita, and third one from Dr. Fidel, then the last one from Dr. Daniel. So could you have a question, comment on one or more of the presentations? Please go ahead. You want to start with the gentleman over there. Switch off on. So switch on the microphone, then you go ahead, Jen, go ahead.
Thank you so much.
I want to mention that we are with the Emerita online. If you want to ask a question on the Emerita presentation, he can intervene, but also he worked with David, he can also intervene. Good.
Thank you so much. My name is Kwame Innocent. I would like to ask the question to Mr. Vedast Kamasa. As he said that in his presentation that he have done a research about mobile banking as a case study of the Mwari Musako. So I have some questions I want to ask him. That you know that the members of the Mwari Musako, many of them are low-income population, so that they are first category, second category. Others of them they are teachers, and you know that they earn monthly, which can say that they don't have enough income. And they say that in automation of mobile banking systems, there is a software that they develop that to help them that in the operations or transactions. So do you think that according to their salaries, payment monthly, that charges from their monthly account and to withdraw the money from the account on the machine, is it will be able to them that there will be a positive impact to support them to recover from the COVID-19? Because you see that sometimes when you are going to the ATM machine, they charge. So there's some charges. And also to have an ATM card, like a Visa card, smart card, like a Gold card, it needs also some charges so that you can operate well in transaction. Do you think, have you ever, how do you see in that project, in your research, according to the Umar Mseko members, you say that there are cooperatives, there is teachers. Is it going to be a positive impact to them? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Vedas is online. He had another con, then he's online. I hope he had your question. He will be able to respond. Can we take other question, other comments? Yes, go ahead. We take like 4 together, then we respond.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Also, my question first question go to Vedas, who talked about the Umwari Musako. Those teachers, you said one of the challenges is that they are using only one mobile operator. Did you try to understand why it is only one mobile operator providing that service to teachers so that policymakers can know how to address it? Another thing, apart from having one online operator providing the service, what capacities do they lack to use the software or to use the online banking when they are doing transactions? What skills do they need? Did you try to assess so that that issue can be addressed? Another thing the presenter has just concluded about the online learning in higher institutions of learning. You used ANOVA. How many groups why did you use ANOVA? Because ANOVA is used to compare differences of 2 groups. Which groups? Were you comparing students in town with students in village? Were you comparing students from universities? Because they have different capacities. These universities, they have different capacities to implement the online learning. So how did you really carry out this comparison between the groups? In other words, which group were you comparing with? Because you are using ANOVA, but when you see the topic, it is more about using regression, trying to see the relationships when I see the topic. So if you use ANOVA, it means you are comparing 2 or more groups. So which are these groups? For example, in Kigali, we have different universities, but they have different capacities. How many universities are in a village? How many universities are in town offering those online services? So it is not clear how you used this comparison to apply ANOVA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question or comment? Okay. I can see only those 2. Yes, Arend.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Arend Kouwenaar. I'm working for the Ministry of Finance through GIZ. My question is directed to the representative of IFPRI. I don't know whether Imeta is still online and in Washington, or otherwise to David. A very nice presentation. I think the emphasis on poverty reduction and the impact on household groups of an event like the COVID crisis underlines the importance for the government to have tools actually that allow you to assess the impact of those shocks on the economy through all the sectors and then to the households and then to poverty analysis. I think that was also it came out of the session this morning where another tool of the Ministry of Finance was shown in how it can assess a shock, the impact on the economy and the policy response. So my question to Imeta is on the inclusion of policy responses in the social accounting matrix multiplier. If you could say something about that, because it was nicely shown what the impact was of the initial shock, right? But could you say something about how various policy responses of the government could be incorporated, so that such a tool is in fact part of the permanent toolkit for the government, the Ministry of Finance, to, on a continuous basis, to analyze the impact of shocks and policy measures on the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rand. Okay. Dr. Charis.
Yeah. Thank you, moderator. I just have some comments on the presentation. Yeah, first, I just want to thank them for very good presentations. And I have comments on 2 of those 4 presentations. I just want to comment on the digital economy. Yeah, when you see the